Whatever happened to civility? I've been watching these talk shows on the TV of late, mostly having to do with politics, but what I've noticed is it's actually been going on for a couple of years now, but it's getting worse, it seems to me. The way people involved in a discussion are inclined to shout over one another so that there is no conversation possible. Somebody makes a point, somebody starts to make a point, and then the person of another opinion shouts them down. Just doesn't shout them down, just keeps shouting, as if it somehow a person's argument can be conveyed in one by volume, and volume alone. Because neither side, when they're doing that, can be heard. Eventually, I begin to think that being heard is not the issue. It's making sure that your opponent is not heard that is the intent. I have noticed this, that the shouters, the people who are shouting down the other point of view, tend to be the conservatives. It's not total. But most of the time, if you see a person for the progressive or the liberal or the left point of view shouting, it's to try to regain what was his or hers in the first place, the floor, because the moderator had given that person the floor. And then the conservative, who doesn't like what he's hearing or she is hearing, starts shouting the person down. Why is that? I think fundamentally what it is that the conservative agenda, as it stands today, is so far removed from its ultimate principles, its beginning principles, and it's so enmeshed in what is really a might makes right kind of theology almost. They don't want anybody to hear any other point of view, because it may call into question the fundamental premises of their own point of view, which cannot stand under public scrutiny. Not in this country. We're not a might makes right kind of people. There is a segment of our population, I don't know how large it is, I'm not at all convinced that it constitutes the full support of the Republican Party, even though the Republican Party has, won a lot of recent elections. I don't think that that's based on what people know of the Republican Party so much as it is what the impressions they have of the message the Republicans have been giving out. And, for example, to make sense out of that, the religious right really believes somehow that the Republican Party has their best interest. This comes from the aura of personal responsibility that Republicans have tried to acclaim for themselves, even though their presidents or their public officials over the last few years have been the most belligerent, anti-Christian men and women in public life for many years now. Now, it's not saying that there aren't any Democrats of whom we could say are progressives, of whom you could say the same, but fact is that Lyndon Johnson, a Democrat, did lie us into a war, so the Democrats, I'm not trying to say, are innocent. But in my lifetime, every Republican president has lied us into one kind of war or another. And I think that's basically true, and it cannot be argued otherwise. So, can you say? I think you can say that of Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson lied about the Gulf of Tonkin, and for that, he should be historically damned, as should Ronald Reagan for lying to us about the invasion of Grenada and all of the stuff he was doing in Central America, specifically Nicaragua, which was United States terrorist action. That was a terrorist action, what we did down there. And he should be condemned for that. George Bush the First finagled us into the first war with Iraq by using his commander-in-chief role, quote unquote, to put our troops into harm's way and then argue that we had to keep going to support the troops. And the way he did that was not necessarily a lie. At least what he did do was get the support of the world. And I don't know that he lied about that one, but he did lead us into a war that was essentially unnecessary and essentially not in our national interest. It was in, perhaps, as is this one, in the oil industry's interest. But I don't know. Anyway, getting back to the point. What I'm trying to say is we need to, here I am, okay, some by myself. I'm not arguing with anybody, and I'm sure that if anybody were to watch this, I would get a lot of arguments. But is there some way that we can get back to civility where we all have wild and I don't think there's a person in the world who's not just a little bit angry about what's going on, one way or the other, whether you're angry at progressives or liberals who talk like I'm talking, or you're angry about at Republicans or conservatives who are trying to say that because we're the most powerful country in the world, everybody should be kowtowing to us. The neighborhood bullies, whatever. We should be able to sit down and talk, and we should be able to work out our common ground. Because if we don't have common ground, we have to face something. If we are really as divided as it appears, then it's time to start talking about severing this union, because the United States is anything but united. And what's basically happening is they're using the illusion of the United States to exert overwhelming power. Well, it's actually not overwhelming, as it turns out, but anyway, they believe to be overwhelming power upon other nations in the world, making us into the neighborhood bullies, and everything that we despised the whole time as a nation we were growing up. Anyway, obviously it's not easy to stay on track with one train of thought when you are discussing these issues these days. But I think that I'll leave it at one basic and final point. I've said it and I'll say it again. We've got to return to civility. Equal conversation between all interested parties, sharing ideas, looking for common ground. Or we have to start taking a look at severing these United States into as many separate countries as are representative of the ideas and values of the peoples of this country. How we do that? Let's pray that we don't have to do another war over it. The Constitution of the United States is a contract with which we all came to an agreement. It's our feeling right now that we could probably still, at least my feeling, that we could probably still live with that agreement, except that it has been so badly maligned and destroyed. For example, the Congress has the right to has the authority to declare war. The President does not. But the Congress does not have the authority to give the President of the United States unconditional permission, authority to use whatever means of force the President feels is necessary to achieve an end. I don't care what that end is. Congress does not have that authority. We are operating outside the Constitution of the United States. We are against the law. We are, all of us who support this, or allow it to happen, complicit in treason. The Constitution of the United States has been destroyed. There is no United States of America. The only thing that unites us is fear and the weapons of those who are in power, and our own timidity. But once again, this is all pointless. Why do I